What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. We're here today to take a look back at AEW Double or Nothing from 2024, which of course aired in Las Vegas, Nevada. We had a couple of returns, a couple of title changes, a champion that retained, Anarchy in the arena, and all that good stuff, right? So, again, as always, thank you guys so much for checking out the show. We're not going to waste much time. We're going to get right into it because it was a stacked card, which is no surprise there with it being an AEW pay per view. So we're going to get right into it. But I just want to always say thank you for checking out the show. If you're viewing it on YouTube or listening on Apple, Spotify, whatever you're doing, I appreciate it. Feel free to follow us on Twitter at kickashpodcast underscore or me personally at ASHMANNS. But like I said, we're going to get right to it. The overall show I think was pretty good. You know, it's never a question really with AEW, which I think we're very fortunate on. Is and the question never is rather if it's going to be a good pay per view, right? It's always going to be at bare minimum a very good pay per view, right? I think there's maybe been one or two that were like not great, you know, and everything else has been very good to great. So in that respect, we have been very fortunate and very spoiled. Especially if you've been a long term WWE fan over the past 20 years, especially. It has not been great sometimes. Especially the weekly shows and things of that nature, which then lead into the pay-per-views back at that time, PLEs, and things like that. So me myself, you know, I am one of those people that kind of gripe sometimes on the not like a story, necessarily, or especially lately they've ramped some things up, but maybe just not at the substance that we're looking for, or just the I don't want to say the amount of stories, but it's kind of a weird thing, right? Like before it was like, what are we doing? There's no real sense of direction. I think that's maybe like kind of where I would be getting at is yeah, there were a lot of mini stories, but it was just kind of like it's there, but then sometimes it's not there, or there's no real sense of direction, or the matches will seem predictable. So it's and trust me, you know, obviously WWE has their very, very mass share of predictability, right? But predictability isn't always a bad thing either, you know? So that was kind of always one of my gripes is just making it make sense, you know, make it make sense. And I think we're getting back on track, you know what I mean? I think last night's show really wasn't necessarily a reset or anything of that nature, but I think it really kind of shook things back into play. And it kind of took some people who were maybe it's like what is that again, that Connect Four thing where you had like those row of like little circles and you had like the little discs and you had to like put them in each slot. It kind of reminds me of like one of those where you had like all the discs at the top, and for whatever reason they just weren't falling into place, but they were there, they're in the perfect order, but they just weren't falling into place, right? So you just gotta take the shit and just shake it, and then they fall down into their perfect little circle. So I feel like that's kind of what last night was, right? It was just kind of like a shaking of the little discs into play, if you will. um, so with that being said, like I said, I don't think it was a fantastic pay per view or anything of that nature, but I think it was very good. So we are going to get right into it. Thank you guys, like I said again, for checking out the show and following us here and commenting. I very much appreciate it. And again, if you know me, I don't go through the matches move by move. That's just first of all, me watching this show. I personally I wouldn't be able to enjoy it as much as I do and really be a fan if I'm writing stuff down move for move. Even when I would go to some shows and even just make like a match list and stuff like that, for whatever reason, it would kind of take me out of it. I would feel like I'm there, like working and not just observing and enjoying it. And that's just me personally. Like some people, and probably most people who do this as a profession, and again, I don't not claiming to, but just speaking in general, like people who do reporting and watch this as their job and their livelihood, who do documented uh match or move by move and things like that. Like I give you guys so much credit because it could have been me. But that's why I just wanted to kind of set the table there if you're checking out for the first time. But with that being said, we are going to, like I said, get right into it now that I kind of rambled on there for a little bit. The show opened up Of course, there was a buy-in. I did not watch the buy-in. I was trying to wash my car, which was not successful. So I will be doing that after we wrap up here. But the show itself, the most important part of this show, this review show, the card itself opened up with the AEW International Championship match. Roderick Strong, your defending champion, facing off against Will Ospreay. And if you listened to me before, you know, and I think I even said this one may open the show. If I didn't, it is what it is. But if I did, cool, I got that right. This was one of those where I was probably on the majority of the bandwagon, right? Why is Will Ospreay wanting to go after this championship? He should be gung ho and dead focus on the main title, the heavyweight championship, and leading into All In, right? Especially since we have that summer series that's taken place and that was announced, kind of leading into, I think it was what, 6 shows, eight shows leading into All In London. Which again, this isn't a prediction show for that, but all roads seem to lead to Osprey facing off or being a very main event and a key player in that show, right? So it makes you wonder, why is he diverting and taking a complete side road and facing off against Roderick Strong for the international championship. Now, again, if he's going to win this championship and then potentially merge and unify the championships at All In with whatever he ends up doing and whoever he ends up facing off against, then okay, because I obviously don't see him, spoiler, Will Ospreay run, right? If you're listening to this, obviously you most likely know. But Ospreay did end up winning and winning and be obtaining his first AEW official championship here, which is pretty cool. But like I was saying, unless the goal is to have him win this title and possibly unify it, so, you know, slash merge into either the heavyweight championship or possibly the Continental Championship with Okada. That could be a thing, you know, because who's going to argue with Osprey and Okada, right? Especially at a big show with it being All In. Um, if he's not going to face off against, if either of them, really, for that matter, if they're not going to face off against Swerve for the championship, then I think that's pretty much a no brainer, right? And not even a consolation prize, like it's like a 1A 1B type thing, or 1A, and it's kind of like almost like they're equals, and some people may even prefer to see Osprey and Okada just with the history there and the callbacks there and the things like that. But I know a lot of people as well, and myself included, wanted to see and were kind of looking forward to seeing Osprey and Swerve. But again, that's just us being fans and putting that out there. There was, to be fair, there was nothing that AEW did to kind of even put that out there, and it ended up being like a bait and switch or us into what AEW was selling, right? We as fans, unless I missed something, but my memory and on my end, I kind of always expected once Osprey was signed, actually, like, oh, okay, like now the road is to All In for him, right? So, and with him being as big as he is, you're gonna want him to be involved in the biggest thing possible on the show. But again, with Okada being on your roster on your roster now as well, who can argue with Osprey and Okada, especially since now both of them are champions. And I think, especially with what Tony Khan said in his media scrum, with wanting to add potentially even more titles, which I don't even want to really speak into existence or speak about because I'm scared to put it out in the universe. Um, you could very easily unify the Continental Championship and the International Championship. So again, way off there, or way off in the future there. So we're not going to get too far into that, but I think that's a possibility. And again, this match here with Roderick Strong, getting back to the match at hand, this was very good. You know what I mean? And that was, again, like it's kind of one of those things where it's like you kind of feel like a piece of shit for even saying anything, not negative, but like that's something that's not like roses and sunshines. You know what I mean? When it comes to like a story or anything like that, because you know the match is going to be good. But to me, that's what makes you want the story and the build to even be that much better. You know what I mean? Because you know the match is going to be great. So it's like, damn, like you have 4 weeks going into it, and you're just sitting here as a fan, like kind of fantasy booking, like, oh, what could happen and things of that nature, and it doesn't happen. And again, not saying that that was what happened with this, but just kind of like an overall sense. With this one though, it was just like I said, just one of those things where I don't even think it really need to happen, but it did, and here we are. So with that being said, the of course, there was a scary moment where I think it was a senton, right? That Matt Bennett, I believe it was Matt Bennett, or maybe it was Taven, or let me see what it was here. But yeah, of course, it was during the moment where the Undisputed Kingdom were interfering, and it was crazy because the referee clearly could see the interference and just did nothing, and that generated a ref you suck chant, which we don't hear much in wrestling. We do obviously at some points, but it's becoming, it really stood out to me. Oops, more recently in NBA games, since we're in the playoff mode and things like that. But it's filtering over into wrestling now, which I think is pretty interesting. But Bennett had ran the ropes directly right in front of the ref's view and hit a flipping senton on Osprey, who was ringside, and Osprey, right at, I think during that move, like appeared to land right like at the top of his head. And it was scary, you know what I mean? Like these dudes, like of course they're professionals and they know what they're doing, but we're all human, you know what I mean? And it's scary, and you just want of course you want everyone to be careful, right? But it was just one of those things where it didn't necessarily need to happen, so it's just like, it makes you kind of cringe. But of course everyone seems to be okay. Osprey seemed to be good. He was in the media scrum after that, dancing to Mercedes Monet's dance. And I saw a video on Twitter. He went out and ended up getting a steak, I think it was, that he mentioned in the scrum. Went to some type of dinner, and he was doing the dance sitting at the table as well. So, and I think it was his birthday. I think that's what he was celebrating. So if it was, shout out to Osprey. Happy birthday, bruv, I guess is a proper greeting there. But yeah, so of course the match itself, again, gonna move it along here. It was great. It was what it was. But the main purpose of this and the whole talking point and what everyone, not what everyone is going to remember, but 1A and 1B type thing, right, is what happened thereafter. So we, of course, got a returning Adam Cole, who was Sans boot, no crutches, no boot, no, excuse me, wheelchair, nothing like that. He did mention that he still needed to go home or he should be home rather, rehabbing his injured ankle and foot. Obviously, still playing that up, and I think it's been like a year now, because he said that the past 2 years has been hell on him. So I don't, gosh, like it's just been so shitty for him. I feel for him, but that led to I believe 2 to 3 minute little video package of a camera walking through a beautiful mansion that had certain pictures on the wall, led into a room that had a very familiar picture on the left side of the room when you walk in on the wall of MJF. It was a very cool setup. It was very simple, but it spoke a lot. In the center, it had a mannequin, essentially, with, I don't believe it had a head, but it was one of those mannequin displays that you would see in a store. It had a suit with a very recognizable scarf that we have all seen once or twice. And then on the left side, still continuing on that wall. So if you're looking at the mannequin straight forward, it would be on your right side now. If you're walking in, it'd still be on your left. In the corner of it, it had about maybe 4 or 5 shelves. I didn't see or I did, but I don't recall. But the couple things that stood out to me the most were, it was, God, what was it? Maybe it was a tank, like a little oxygen tank. I believe it was. It was sometime. I got to go back and because I remember it thinking like, oh my gosh, what is that from? But of course, right underneath that, which is the second thing that really stood out to me, was the dog collar in the chain from his match with CM Punk, which was phenomenal. It was just great. I ended up being able to go there since it was very local. So just fantastic, and I still think that's probably AEW's best story. Or maybe top, not maybe, definitely top 5. But of course I'm probably biased there. But then right underneath of that, it was either it was a Nightmare Family or American. I think it was Nightmare Family or American Nightmare. A T-shirt right underneath of that, which obviously says a lot as well. And so you could tell that room was a shrine to pivotal moments in his wrestling career. And of course, obviously, spoiler alert if you haven't guessed by now, we were inside the mansion of one MJF. But I think it was a very simple reintroduction, but a look back on the history of MJF very briefly. But it spoke a lot, and I want to go back and re-watch that whole thing as well. And again, it was only a couple minutes, but just that, and then the whole segment itself. But between that and then, of course, him making his shotgun return, cutting a fantastic promo. He, of course, was wearing a leather jacket with a jean jacket cut out over top of it, which, of course, was reminiscent of Triple H's return in Madison Square Garden in 2002, I believe it was. Um, and yeah, that whole visual itself was just very, very surreal. And I think it was very telling too. He didn't have a t-shirt on, which showed that he was in phenomenal shape, so shout out to him. But no scarf either. And it was just, I think, black jeans and then some boots, black boots. So I think we're getting a character shift for MJF. I think we're getting a transition into the next chapter and the next metamorphosis of MJF, right? The fact that he's already tweaking his character and already shifting to a different version of himself so early on in his career as a whole, right? And so early on in his AEW career, and the fact that throughout his promo, and of course there was the line that everyone's going to talk about, right? That I don't need a New Japan or a Vince McMahon to make MJF because MJF made MJF. Of course that's going to stand out, right? Because that's facts. That's 100% fact. But to me, what he did with the devil mask and referencing that and signifying just pretty much that the fact that he, without specifically stating it, he signified and he recognized, hey, what I did with this mask, that I deviated and I maybe did too much too soon there, and that's not the version of me that people want. And you want the piece of shit heel, you want the bad guy MJF, you want the guy who doesn't give a fuck and doesn't care, and you want this version, this raw version of MJF, and not the guy who is buddy buddy doing kangaroo kicks and things like that. I think he did actually mention the kangaroo kick, or referenced it. But just going out there and just owning what he did, right? And without making it pansy or cheap or kind of like catering to the fans and like kind of like not begging for our forgiveness or like apologizing directly, but just kind of addressing it and moving on, like moving the fuck on. And I don't even, if I had to place a little bit on it, nothing crazy, but just a little wager, I would say we probably don't even get an Adam Cole MJF one-on-one match. I don't even really see the need. I think him kicking, of course, it's always him kicking in Adam Cole in the nuts, and not him. I'm saying, if you've listened to me before, it's just one of my pet peeves in wrestling is just dudes kicking each other in the nuts. It's just so annoying. Like, okay, we get it. And to be fair, like the word bitch, when females use it, like for every, like that's like their dig, right? You bitch. Like, okay, we get it. Now the men have been starting to use it as well, but it's just on my list, right? But I honestly, and like I think that was enough, and that was enough closure. And with him doing the elbow drop, I think it was the elbow drop or the knee drop that he did on the double mask. I think it was perfect. I think that was the perfect end to that story, and that's all we need. And with this almost new bad guy of MJF, I think that's the perfect launching pad. And with him, of course, declaring that he's the wolf of wrestling and he ain't fucking leaving. I think that was perfect. And I'm here for that direction. And I think that when you think about the Wolf of Wall Street, right, and then how he could be the Wolf of Wrestling and the comparisons with the money and things like that. Not sure about the drug use and the drinking. Hopefully not. With moderation, right? Um, I could see him playing up to that, you know what I mean? Like, still being classy, but being a dude who, like, that piece of shit dude who doesn't give a fuck. He's out for himself. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and it is what it is, type thing. And of course, he's got the money, right? So yeah, I'm here for it, man. I'm fucking here for it. I love what they did. I love that he was at the beginning of the show because it was a big enough deal that you wanted it to have an impact and you really wanted it to hit, but you didn't want it to overshadow Swerve or your Anarchy in the arena match and the main event and things of that nature, and Mercedes Monet and Willow Nightingale, things like that, you know? So I love the way they did it. I think it was a home run. I love that he wasn't on the media scrum. I'm not 100%, but because I fell asleep towards the end, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he came out because it's a perfect cliffhanger going into Wednesday and the weeks prior or the weeks following after, rather. So yeah, I'm totally here for it. I think they did a great job with MJF's return. I think they did just enough, and I think this version of MJF is what AEW needs going forward. And I think that, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that tattoo, right? And I will say though, he's not as committed as Cody. Like he didn't get the shit right there on his neck. um, but granted, Cody's wasn't the company's not logos specifically, but the letters. But yeah, it isn't a place where you can cover it, and it's very easy to cover. His boots are going to cover it, I'm pretty certain. Um, but yeah, so it's I get it and I dig it. But then again, too, like if and when he does end up leaving years from now and going to WWE, it's not even like a fuck you to WWE or something that he can't show. It will be very interesting to see if they let him wrestle with that, like I'm talking 5-10 years from now whenever he ends up in WWE, if that long. But the fact that it does say AEW, I don't know, it'd be very I'm trying to picture now. Like I can't wait to in the future come back and listen to this and be like, oh yeah, it was this day at this event, or whatever, when we first saw him wrestling in WWE with the tattoo on the back, right? With the AEW letters. But with that being said, shout out to him. I'm happy he's back. He looks fucking fantastic. Dude is in insane shape. He's gonna be the future of the company, and I think he made the right decision too. Like they didn't really hype up the bidding war of 2024 as much as I thought they would leading into it. And I like that they did it right. Obviously, he ended up getting injured. He was a champion. He had the double storyline. It was completely different from what I'm sure that they had imagined going into it. But I like that it was referenced. I like that we have an answer. His promo and his segment really answered so many open-ended questions that we had. But then again, and close and kind of closed that chapter and then started a new chapter. I don't even want to say book, but it started one chapter and it ended one chapter rather and started the next chapter in the book of MJF. And I'm very excited to see what it is and it means for him going forward, because he really he's already veering into one of those areas where he doesn't necessarily need to be the champion, but he would make it and the company and himself mean that much more if he was. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be very fun to watch. Very fun to watch. But moving along here, because like I said, we have like 80 million matches that were on the card. The next matchup that we had was the AEW Trios Championship match. The Bang Bang Gang facing off against Death Triangle. I'm just happy that we have Pac still here. I mentioned, on one podcast that I was just bummed at how it's always like come and go with Pac, but I'm happy that he's been here for a while and things seem to be good. He seems to be good, so just very happy to see him. And I love Death Triangle's entrance. I just think it's super cool. Penta slipped, or no, Phoenix slipped a little bit, but he's just so smooth and I like it. I like when people I'm not gonna say I like when people slip, but I like when shit like that happens, because it seems real and shit like that happens. You know what I mean? We're all fucking human. He's next level, right? You know what I mean? He's just one of those freak athletes who makes walking on ropes look normal. um but seeing him just kind of slide there, it just kind of made me feel like, yeah, like this is real life. So it just made me feel a little better. I don't know if that means, I don't know what this is about me. It's not like I laughed at him or anything like that, but it was just like, he is human. um, but this match was what it was. I'm not gonna spend too much time here. But of course one of the moments and top moments of the match is of course, the prize return of Juice Robinson, whose interference allowed White to hit Pac with a match-ending Blade Runner. And again, shout out to, if I didn't mention before, CBS Sports. I'm using their match breakdown and their layout here for my reference points. So shout out to them, because again, like I said, I make a little or a few notes, but I or if something like really stands out and I know like it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I'll totally remember, and I don't need to write it down, but you don't remember. So there, I'll write down a few things like that, but not match for or hold for hold or anything like that. But so shout out to all the reporters out there again. Couldn't be me. But of course, like I said, Pac, or I'm sorry, Juice Robinson returned and allowed White to hit Pac with the Blade Runner to retain the championships there. I honestly wasn't expecting Juice to return, so that got me there. Um, but no surprise with Bang Bang Gang retaining the titles. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into what I want for Jay White right here and right now. Next up, we had the AEW Women's World Championship. Toni Storm, which is your champion, facing off against Serena Deeb. This match, the thing that really stood out to me in this match, and I was surprised about, was the love for Toni Storm and the lack of really hype, or not hype, but crowd and fan support for Serena Deeb. Like, of course, there was no disrespect or anything like that, or any like blatant like you suck or anything like that, but it was just the love for Toni Storm, and I think that we really need a definitive role for Toni, because yes, she does seem more heelish the majority of the time, but then we have moments like this where she's just cheered, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it's just one of those no pun intended gray areas where I am still in the camp where, at least for the past however long she's had the championship now, like, if the division was in a different state, maybe not, but I think she did need to have the championship, and I think the division needed her to have the title. Granted, we have 2 titles, so, and we'll get into that later, but I think Storm did need to hold the championship, and I think that the division did need her to have it. Now, I think in the meantime, we should have been building up other challengers and other women to make it viable and a credible opponent and believable that they would potentially beat her. But yeah, I think for now, like, Storm just kind of running through it. It is what it is, and I'm still digging it. And I'm in the minority there, so I will admit that. But again, no surprise there for me that Storm retained her title. Next up was another match where it was a good match, but I don't think it really needed to be on the card itself and could have knocked down the time frame here. That was Orange Cassidy versus Trent Beretta. He did come back out to Where Is My Mind, so that was very cool. Um, to me, I don't agree with Cassidy beating Beretta. I like, that they referenced afterwards, where I think it was Renee. Yeah, it was Renee. They mentioned it here. She tried to interview him post match, but he said, "I'm not doing this." He being Trent. So we'll see what comes of that. But again, it's just, I don't know. I think he needed that win more than him just having that brief moment of promo time saying, I'm not doing this." So, and I just don't think Cassidy needed that win. I think Beretta obviously needed the win more, and I think it would have meant more. And I think Cassidy would have been just fine losing. So, and and I will kind of hold off a little bit to see what happens after that, and I will admit if I'm wrong, but I just, something's just not sitting right with me on how this one is playing out right now. But we will see. Next match again. I'm not gonna get into much either. Was the FTW Championship? Your champion Chris Jericho facing off against Hook and Katsuyori Shibata. This one ended like we all pretty much expected, and um, to me, like, I think this one kind of didn't need to be on the card, or if it did, it maybe have different stipulations. But with it being an FTW championship match, it's like that's pretty much what this type of match is, right? So it was just not too many weapons matches, but it just kind of maybe like it was kind of like, all right, I get the point, right? You know what I mean? Just with the totality of everything on the match, or on the card rather. But yeah, like this one, it was fine. But again, with this one, even down to who took the pin, being Shibata, at the end, Jericho hit the Judas effect on Hook and ended up hitting Shibata, who was still stuck in the trash can, and retained the championship there. So it's fine. We did have an interference from Big Bill at one point, and we did have the bounty hunter Brian Keith who came out there and saved the day for Jericho at one point as well. So I get it, you know what I mean? But it's just, and it's the learning tree. So I appreciate him, Jericho, working with the younger talent and incorporating them. But I don't know, man. It's just, again, something that just seems kind of weird to me with this one. Next up, which was probably one of my favorite matches on the card, was Moxley facing off against Konosuke Takeshita for the Eliminator match for the shot at the Heavyweight Championship for IWGP. This one, again, great match. One of my favorites, if not my favorite wrestling match on the card. I think I'm gonna say that my favorite though for a match later on. excuse me, I had to get a quick drink of the coffee there. Um, but I think this one was right up there, and the only thing that I was really surprised about was the outcome of the match, which is, I guess, a good thing, right? I predicted that Takeshita was going to win, but Moxley defeated Takeshita via pinfall, and I don't know. I don't know. Mox hit a curve stop onto a steel chair that Takeshita, to be fair, introduced with the referee distracted. Moxley handicap or that was just their feedback. Moxley said Moxley's handicap performance stopped it from reaching the heights of their previous match on AEW Rampage, but it was still a great showcase. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so that's what I stated. Sorry, I just didn't see how they were ending their match breakdown there. But Moxley hit a curb stop onto a steel chair that Takeshita introduced. So I just I don't know, man. Like to me, and especially thinking back, like we just discussed a couple shows back, what Takesh just said about the fun part and being in America and things like that. Like, I don't know, man. It's just, again, like, especially with this not being a championship match, obviously, right? Like, not saying that Takeshita should be the champion, the IWGP champion or anything right now, but I think he should have won the Eliminator match. I think that he should have at least won this match to set him up in a future match to then take the loss there. But just give him something, man. I don't know. And again, I don't know what this means for him going forward. I'm not saying they're burying him or anything crazy like that. I'm not saying like, oh no, it's a lost cause or anything dramatic. But again, man, it's just kind of a bummer. Just kind of a bummer. But the match was great though, and they have chemistry. Like those two guys work very well together. So we're gonna see this match again in the future. But again, like this could have set that up. Very easily could have set it up for possibly a forbidden door. Just saying, but it is what it is, and we'll see what happens. Next up, we had the AEW TNT Championship match. Adam Copeland, your champion, facing off against Malachi Black in the barbed wire steel cage match. The honestly, as I read the title, the only thing that I see and that stands out to me is that elbow drop that Adam Copeland did from the top of the cage onto Malachi Black, who is of course in the ring. And as he was going down, I don't know, I keep wanting to say edge, but Adam Copeland, like he almost not that he wanted to land on his feet, but like he put it like his feet were straight down. And to me, it just for a split second there, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, like I cringed. I was like, he's gonna break his like. I could just imagine like everything just like crushing and just like, oh, I don't even want to say it. You know what I mean? Not that like I don't know, like I'm one of those weird people that like I can watch shit like that, but like it weird like recalling it just kind of like makes me cringe. But like I don't know, man, like it's just fucking crazy, and it like made me cringe if you haven't guessed. But this was a good match and I really dug it. I was very happy just to see Malachi Black in a singles match. I think it was great, and obviously we did end up getting interference and things like that. We did get the surprise debut return of Gangrel. I read somewhere that the copyright for the Brood, or I don't know if it was the Brood name specifically, but something tying into the Brood characteristics and imagery and things like that from WWE had expired. So, and that Adam Copeland picked it up. I just thought about that now. If I thought about it earlier, I would have done more research. But if that's the case, then that's a pretty good pickup. But of course, the end of the match came with suddenly the lights going out, or going red rather, and then Gangrel emerged from under the ring. Copeland's Brood brother took out King and Matthews with impaler DDTs. Copeland trapped Black in a barbed wire assisted crossface until he passed out. Um, so yeah, all the haters out there from Malachi Black would be like, "Oh, well, he didn't take a pin loss, right? He just passed out." But let's not. Let's not. It was a very good match and a great match. And shout out to both of them, and Adam Copeland doing what he's doing. And Gangrel do look great. So shout out to him. It's fucking great. And it was a bloodbath, man. No pun intended. But yeah. And again, like just another match where it was just a lot of similar things. Just like brutalness and brutality. But the next matchup on the card was the AEW TBS Championship. excuse me, your champion going in is, of course, Willow Nightingale, facing off against Mercedes Moné, making her in ring debut in AEW. The entrance that she had was very cool. I really dug the marching band type thing. Made me think of the movie Drumline, if I'm dating myself there. Um, Back before Nick Cannon had like 15 kids, which is just, it's just crazy, like, to think when I was watching Drumline then, like, oh, like, this dude's gonna have like a shit ton of kids. Like, I mean, not that it makes any difference, but it's just like, because that's his thing. Like, and that's what he talks about. He wants to, like, that's his goal, is to have a lot of kids. And hey, dude's, it's not like he's neglecting them, right? Like, dude's got money. Like, dude's set. You know what I mean? And his kids are gonna be set. Like, the family's gonna be set. So more power to him, and shout out to them. But it's just funny to think back, like things you like, just looking back, and just seeing where everyone ends up, and just fast forwarding into life sometimes. It's just a funny and crazy thing. But back to the match here, of course. Um, Mercedes looked like $1,000,000. No surprise there. Being the CEO, you would hope, right? But I really think Willow had a great showing. I think this match was, it was, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, this match was tied for me for my favorite match of the night, which is maybe crazy to say. Um, was it like 100% spot on? No, but that's okay. And I think for this being their technically second outing, I think they could very easily run it back. I'm not surprised that Mercedes Moné won. I am happy we did get a payoff, right, with Stokely and Chris Statlander betraying Nightingale post match. Um, but I think that it, and again, like, I was one of the people who wanted Willow to retain, but knew Mercedes was going to win, right? I think everyone knew that. No surprise there. Hope no one really bet on that. Um, but I like what it does for Willow going forward. Willow looked great, and I think it accomplished a lot here. And I think Mercedes in the media scrum looked like $1,000,000 again as well. And I think it sets her up, and again AEW up as well, for good follow up and a good weekly thread. And they need to present her that way, and I think they will. So now the question is who she faces off against next going forward. And there was a question during the media scrum after the pay-per-view itself. If there was going to be, because Tanahashi was sitting beside Tony Khan during the scrum, and if there was going to be any Stardom talent or any New Japan influence, and Mercedes was pretty much just like, yeah, like, let's go. So we'll see. Again, excuse me. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Maybe allergies or something. But next up we had your, oh, and again they were presenting it as a three-way main event for the card itself here. So I guess this is the second part of your triple threat main event for Double or Nothing. Your AEW World Championship match, of course, your champion going in, Swerve Strickland facing off against Christian Cage. And honestly, I think this was probably like one of the more like well wrestled matches on the match or on the card itself. And I just appreciate Christian Cage, man. Like, I appreciate what the dude does. um it was, again, this match was pretty predictable, and I think that's okay. And I think that that's kind of what you wanted. Like, you want something to be good, you want it to be, have a good story, which this did. It had really good build going into it. And I think you wanted something to showcase your champion, and to have him go in there and face off and fight the odds, right? So I think this match did that. And I think another takeaway and one of my favorite moments of the night was the ending of the match. And to kind of like just say it for what it was, they referenced it here. The finishing sequence was a thing of beauty, and I think that's is exactly what it was. Strickland intercepted Cage's spear midair with a house call, and people went crazy for it. And that's why Christian is so underrated when it comes to in-ring talent. I think looking back on it, he is probably one of AEW's top signings. I wish his hype going into it was presented differently, but man, like, long term, like, dude, like, deserves his flowers. But again, Swerve, to get back to the match, Swerve hit another Swerve stomp and then a second house call to seal the deal and retain his championship. And again, this was a very good match, and a match that I'd love to go back and watch again, because I'm sure there's some things that I missed even while I was watching it. Um, But again, like this was exactly what it needed to be for Swerve, and I think the key for him is just the follow up and the build, in his title defenses. Now, the final match on the card of Double or Nothing in your last of the three-way main event was the, excuse me, Anarchy in the Arena. Of course, Team AEW facing off against Team Elite. This one, so the thing kind of going with the Anarchy in the Arena match is each year we've had music playing in the beginning, right? So this year we had the Elite's theme going on. Danielson took the microphone and demanded that they cut the shit off and play the greatest theme song in pro wrestling, that being, of course, Europe's The Final Countdown, which Danielson has had early in his career, but it's kind of tied back into him now thanks to Tony Khan. Vegas loved it, sang along with him, which was pretty cool. And then we got Darby Allin. He hit a coffin drop off of the arena gate onto. Oh, I don't. They didn't have it written down here. Oh my God, who was it? Was it Nick Jackson? Fuck, I forget. But it was like this dude is just wild, man. Like this dude, I don't get what he. I don't. He's just not real. And again, I'm not going to sit here and go through the entire Anarchy in the Arena match. But I thought that the entrance with the music, or the entrance, the beginning of the match rather, with the music playing and Matthew Jackson telling them and demanding them that they stop it because it's too expensive for AEW's budget was just fucking great. It's Darby Allin, man. There's a couple moments here. Allin drowning Perry in an ice bucket. Perry knocking himself out while running over Allin with a small bus. Allin emerging from the wreckage, only for the Young Bucks to trap him inside of the stage elevator. A TK driver onto giant poker chips, and Nicholas Jackson hitting a senton atomico off of the stage through a table. And that was just excuse me, the beginning. Towards the end of the match, fucking crazy. It's just, y'all gotta see this shit. Towards the end of the match, Perry grabbed AEW founder Tony Khan in a callback to the infamous physical altercation between Perry and CM Punk that led to Punk's AEW termination. Punk brought Khan into the rampway, but was greeted by Allen's flamethrower that we saw on Dynamite, which he apparently has a license for, or a permit for. Allen launched a ball of fire at Perry that lit up Perry like a Christmas tree, which is fucking facts, from the feet up. AEW staff were on hand with fire extinguishers to rescue Perry, so no worries, guys. Everything is hopefully okay. Matthew hit Dax Harwood, with an exploding chair. Okada used a thumbtack sleeve to hit Wheeler with the Rainmaker, and the Elite hung Allen upside down from the ceiling by his ankles before hitting him with a thumbtack lace super kicks, which is their new super kicks that just dropped with Reebok, I believe it is. So shout out to them. That's very cool. And they're actually pretty dope shoes. I actually may get some. They're pretty cool. Danielson tried to save the day, but was overwhelmed by his four foes. It's just funny how sometimes they're written for foes. The crowd chanted, "Please help Darby," as Danielson helplessly reached for his unconscious teammate. Perry hit a running knee to pin Danielson, which I think is just crazy. Yeah, y'all gotta fucking watch this shit. But I was very surprised that Perry hit a running knee onto Danielson for the win. Um, yeah, like I the fact that, first of all, the fact that Perry won the match isn't necessarily surprising to me, but the fact that he pinned Danielson, I think is what is kind of the takeaway for me, right? Or not the takeaway, but a very big moment. Um, There was a moment as well. I think it was, yeah, it was Dax. It looked like he was busted open. I think someone, like a fan maybe, threw like a beer can or some shit. And if that's true, like fuck you guys. Like y'all are like, let's let's grow up. And if that is what happened, I hope they got kicked out and whatever legally can happen, like, or whatever, like depending on what Dax wants to do. If that's the case, but I don't know, man. It was just, and again, I could be off, but I thought that's what I saw, and then I saw someone else had mentioned it on Twitter as well. So I just wanted to reference that. Like, if that's the case, like, grow the fuck up, people. But with that being said, this was a great match. If you want to call it a match, right? A great occurrence on the show. Um, no, it was a match. But again, the only thing with this one, I wish there was something really at stake. Like, what happens now that Team Elite won. Um, Tony Khan, I kind of wish he took it a little bit more seriously in the media scrum as well. Like the character, right? Like he was just traumatized during the match that just happened not too long ago. Like within the end of the pay per view and the beginning of the media scrum, what, maybe 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I don't remember exactly how long it time elapsed because I started it a little bit late and I went back. But it couldn't have been that long. But that would be my only little nitpick there in that regard. And again, like it's not like it was on TV or anything like that. It's literally just a media scrum. Um, but with that being said, it sets up an again another thread and another story for Dynamite, and it makes you need to tune into what happens on Dynamite to set the stage for the next however many weeks until we lead into Forbidden Door, which I'm pretty certain that's the next pay per view. I don't think they added a new one or anything like that in the meantime. But again, like, overall, very good to not I great depending on it could be a great show. But it was if nothing else very good. Possibly probably a great show. There were a couple things again that didn't need to necessarily be on the card that could have saved us all some time and made us feel a little bit better at the end of the night. But again, it is what it is, and a lot of people had the next day off. I did as well, so I shouldn't be sitting here bitching about it. But it is what it is, you know what I mean? And again, it's never gonna be a situation where we don't get enough show or enough substance on a pay-per-view with AEW. And again, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for hanging out here and checking out the review show. I will be back soon as possible. I got a couple more toys to maybe record on the road a little bit more, upload a little bit more, maybe edit a little bit more, just kind of advance along, learning as we go here. So I appreciate you guys for hanging out and sticking around here. Thank you for watching the show either on YouTube or listening on Apple, Spotify, following on Twitter at ASHMANNS. That's me personally, or the show's page at Kagash Podcast _ as well. And again, until next time, guys, thank you so much for checking out the show. Enjoy some wrestling and stay safe out there.